care has moved out of the inpatient environment and moved into shopping malls and outpatient imaging and outpatient surgery centers and ambulatory care. Care has gone outside and it lives on every corner. And that has required a more mobile workforce where you've got to really apply not only medical physics, but also radiation safety services in a number of different locations. And that is not inherent to maybe a traditional in-house physics group. It's more towards a mobile kind of workforce that can get out, service all those locations, and support like a national program that a healthcare system may set up.
Welcome to Frame by Frame, Rethink Imaging, a podcast by Imalogics. Here, we explore the intricate world of medical imaging, aiming to dissect the field and inspire both professionals and curious minds alike. I'm your host, Chris St. John.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Rethink Imaging. My guest today is Jason Schneck, the CEO of One Physics. Jason brings nearly 3 decades of leadership experience in healthcare, including senior roles at GE Healthcare and CAE Healthcare. At One Physics, he's leading the company growth as a national provider of outsourced medical physics services. He has a front row view of how consolidation, outsourcing, and workforce shortages are reshaping the physics profession and what it means for hospitals, staff, and patients. Jason, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Chris, thanks for having me on the show. I think it's great platform that you've created here for all things imaging related and certainly all the dynamics that we have in the space today. So it's a great platform and super excited to be with you this morning.
Hell yeah. I'm super excited to talk to you. So if we just take a step back, I've been having lots of conversations about the staffing crisis with radiologists, techs, medical physicists. So when you take a step back and look at the physics landscape right now, what do you think most people would be surprised by the current landscape?
Yeah. A couple of things. I would say, for 25 years before I joined One Physics, I worked alongside of the physicist space. So I was very close to it, but not necessarily, in medical physics directly. So I have a little bit of an inside and an outside view of what I've learned here over the last 18 months as I've been CEO of the company here. The first thing I would say is I think it's largely under-recognized or underappreciated the role that medical physics plays in the healthcare care environment, right? It's fundamentally, it's about patient safety and ensuring a safe environment for patients and for clinicians. And if you talk to like a regular patient that goes in to get a CT scan, they don't even understand the role that medical physics plays in ensuring, the radiation that comes out of the system is safe and they're not being over-radiated, that the image quality is right so they can diagnose it at the right level. So one, I just think it's under-recognized and underappreciated at an industry level by both patients and even sometimes providers. Second thing I would offer is, the industry has remained fairly fragmented. It's one of the last kind of probably spaces within healthcare that is not consolidated at the rate that other things have. The complex regulatory environment certainly enables that, but it's certainly more fragmented than I anticipated it would be. Obviously, we start to see that change. We play a role in that from a company level, but certainly there's a level of fragmentation that you don't see across other parts of healthcare. The third thing I would say, Chris, is there's some fundamental tailwinds within imaging and radiology that are really good for the industry. So if you look at just the increase in advanced imaging that's taking place, more CT, more full body PET, molecular imaging really growing at an outstanding rate. That is all very good for medical physics. You have expansion into Theranostics and advanced therapies like Pluvicto and Lutathera that are really bringing both kind of the radiology side and the oncology of medical physics together. So all these things are really good growth indicators for the industry.
You said that the industry is more fragmented than you initially thought it would be. Why did you think it would be less fragmented than its current state? Like where did that shift occur?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at every other aspect of healthcare, for the most part, consolidation is happening at a rapid pace, right? So on the insurance side, on the provider side, on most other ancillary and even clinical services, you see mass consolidation to try to build scale. because of the complex regulatory environment and the role that states play in medical physics, it's really slowed that down. Now, I'm a believer that it's inevitable that it will change, and we're starting to see that change happen. And I think that that can be a really positive thing for the industry. But certainly, it has lagged some of the other professions and other trends that we see in healthcare that are, where consolidation is very, very much accelerating.
Right. And so I feel like the debate between like outsourced and insourced physics sounds like a business decision, but it also has, like industry-wide repercussions. How would you explain the divide to folks?
I wouldn't really call it a divide. I mean, if you look at most parts of healthcare, whether it's radiologists and reading imaging, or whether it's biomed services or diagnostic imaging services, you have a mix of both across most of those industries. You have some in-house physicians, you have some kind of partner outsourced physician relationships. So that is very common across healthcare. I think for those two dynamics to live in harmony, I kind of view it as a good thing for the industry as it gives medical physicists a choice, right? Do I want to work in academia or teaching? Do I want to work in research? Do I want to be a system-wide chief physicist or radiation safety officer? But most healthcare systems have in-house and outsourced staff that do different things and bring different things to the table. So I think the collaboration that occurs at that level is super important for the industry. And really, it's natural if you look at all the other aspects of care delivery that there is, some insourcing and outsourcing that takes place to provide the best possible care.
It's interesting you say that because, like, forgive my naivete. I mean, my listeners know at this point that I'm still new to this world, but in my mind, on paper, like insourced and outsourced physicists theoretically are delivering close to the same services, accreditation, compliance, safety. But like in practice, you're saying that they are providing different what? Can you explain that a bit to me?
If I'm a large like health system, either regionalized or nationalized, I'm probably going to have like a national radiation safety officer or a chief diagnostic physicist or chief therapy physicist that provides oversight and guidance for the entire program across the entire healthcare system. But what has happened as care has moved out of the inpatient environment and moved into shopping malls and outpatient imaging and outpatient surgery centers and ambulatory care, right? Care has gone outside and it lives on every corner. And that has required a more mobile workforce where you've got to really apply not only medical physics, but also radiation safety services in a number of different locations. And that is not inherent to maybe a traditional in-house physics group. It's more towards a mobile kind of workforce that can get out, service all those locations, and support like a national program that a healthcare system may set up. So the other advantage I would say is we do thousands of tests on an annual basis. So we see every piece of equipment from every manufacturer. We know the idiosyncrasies. We have relationships with the OEMs where we can call them for help and support and guidance. So we see everything across the board. If you work in an in-house organization that has, is maybe more OEM specific to one of the big OEM or medtech providers, or you haven't dealt with complexities of like a Pluvicto from a radiopharmaceutical standpoint in your environment, that is new to you. Whereas we deal in those environments on a daily basis and provide great guidance and advice and consulting around some of those different dynamics that may not be present in a day-to-day hospital or health setting.
There's a lot of discourse going on about this, right? What would you say to the folks who potentially see outsourced physicists as like not quite to the same level of service?
I mean, that's certainly not something I agree with. We have some of the best physicists, I think, in the country on our team. I think it's a matter of choice, right? Like the good thing about diversity in the profession, and I think one of the things that we're really strongly advocating for is to give people an opportunity of what their career path looks like. And some people, like I said, want to work in academia and want to work in research, and that will always be a function of a large academic healthcare system. Some people want, again, to be like a staff physicist or a chief physicist, sometimes in an academic environment, and that's great. Other folks want to be involved in testing and calibration, are very passionate about policies and regulatory environment, and they want to be more involved there. Other people want to get into leadership roles within organizations. So having in-house and outsourced medical physics and having all these different pathways that give people an opportunity to pursue their passion, pursue their passion in the right way and maybe what they're really good at, I think is a really positive thing for the industry. And I also think it's inevitable. It's one of those things like change is going to happen. You can either like lead it and be part of it, or you can be a victim to it and kind of just have to follow along. We want to advocate for positive change and make sure that there will always be a balance of insource versus outsource. And we think we bring a really valuable skill set to the medical physics space and to the radiation safety environment.
Yeah, so I mean, I like what you're saying about giving folks agency and like choosing their own internal pathways. And so that makes me think, like, when you are brought in as a third-party physics provider, how are you structuring that relationship? Are you choosing, are they choosing from a menu of services? Is it it's a proactive partnership? Are you assigning specific physicists? Like, how does that relationship work?
Across diagnostic imaging and therapy physics, it operates very differently. So certainly on the therapy side, where you're working more closely with dosimetrists, and with oncologists, it's more of a nested model. We spend much more time on site and we're more integrated into those care teams on a daily basis. It's a different environment. On the diagnostic side, again, the relationship can be very, transactional, where it's a fee for service environment, all the way up through where we manage comprehensive medical physics programs for acute care hospitals, for IDNs, for outpatient imaging groups across the board. So our goal is to always be able to change and be flexible. So as a customer's environment changes or their footprint changes, we want to be able to evolve with them and continue to provide support at whatever level they might need. So I think that's very important to say. We always start every relationship with, what do you need? Like, what do you need, and kind of what's your perspective on things? And there's a lot of back and forth collaboration and guidance that we provide in how do you really structure the environment or the relationship within the right parameters that the customer has, whether that's from a patient care standpoint or regulatory standpoint, radiation safety, testing and calibration, accreditation, all of those things come into play. And certainly economics is a piece of it.
Yeah. I mean, what do you need is such an interesting question, I feel like, in this larger context. This, not to sound shady or anything, obviously, like, the economics of this are a big piece, but like, have you ever come across health systems that are potentially under investing or looking, just to check the box and, move on with their lives rather than choosing what they need for maximum safety?
Yes. I think we do, right? And I think that's the importance of what we do, and why we've kind of worked very hard to build a wing-to-wing comprehensive medical physics provider radiation safety organization, because a lot of organizations don't see the interconnectedness between all these different functions that they need to satisfy, from accreditation from an imaging standpoint, accreditation on the therapy side, radiation safety, expansion of molecular imaging. Like, there is really a flywheel here that is very interconnected, and often hospitals may manage those things in silos, and then they miss the connected tissue that really exists between it. So we have a lot of very healthy debates. Everyone has sometimes different opinions on how one regulation should be interpreted, or what is, quote unquote, the correct way to handle different situations. So we come across it quite a bit. Our goal is to advise and, obviously consult. If we think an environment isn't the right environment for us to partner in, that's not a situation that we'll get involved with.
Most outsourced physics groups are private, but for some that could be tied to big public companies, do you have any concerns about the ownership of those companies changing how services can affect hospitals and patients?
I don't. Like, I'm a big believer, like, the funding structure, the organizational structure, the ownership structure behind a company should have no influence on the way that it performs or goes to market, right? We define our company by our people, by our mission, by our core values and principles. And that's how we show up every day with our customers, with our people, and with our leadership teams. that's what defines like who we are as a company. And I think that in an ideal world is how it works. So I can speak for One Physics. I can't speak for every other kind of company that's out there. I do think as consolidation occurs, we have the ability to have a bigger voice and bring more representation to the medical physics space. As I said earlier, I think underrepresentation and under advocacy for medical physics and the role that it plays in creating a very safe and excellent care environment for our patients is underrepresented. And as we get bigger and can invest in things like advocacy and in, like changing regulatory in a positive way, regulatory environments in a positive way, those are very good things for the industry. We also give great career opportunities and choices for physicists and what they want to do with their career. So I think there's a lot of positive things that can come from it. And again, ultimately, we all compete on a level playing field. And if we don't show up and do our job in the right way, customers and caregivers are going to make a different choice. And that's something that we have to earn that trust on a daily basis. And, we do that very well. It's very important to us, the culture we create. And ultimately, we want this to be a destination workplace for the medical physics industry. And that's got to be a place where people want to come work. So that's important to us.
That's an interesting spin on it, honestly. I think when you hear about consolidation, right, like just the way that my brain works is like, I think about monopolies and risk associated with that consolidation. But what you're saying is actually kind of the flip of that, which is like by consolidating to some degree, you are able to make more progress just like due to your combined power.
Yeah, I mean, the strength, the scale, the ability to invest in residency programs and education. We have clinical advisory boards, and we have many physicists that sit on ACR and ABR boards in different modalities. We're very active in MQSA regulation. So all of those things, because we have over 250 clinicians in the company, we allow us to be able to invest in those things. And I think that's very important. The other thing I would say is we don't define the rules. So the rules are defined by the regulatory bodies and the accrediting bodies. So we all have to abide by the same rules, whether we're 2 physicists or whether we're 250. That's ultimately the safeguard of the industry. And certainly from a regulatory standpoint, we don't agree with everything that's out there. And we influence for positive change. And again, I think with scale, your ability to do that gets enhanced at a pretty significant level.
Honestly, I'm going to ask for pros and cons of both. But, just to start with outsourcing, critics would say that outsourcing can create distance, right? Physicist isn't there. They're not as close with the staff, not ingrained in the culture. Like, how would you respond to that criticism? And then we'll switch to the other one.
And I've worked in the healthcare service industries and in other segments of the environment. And I would say like our physicists, our radiation safety officers at over 500 facilities across North America, and we're on site either on a daily basis, weekly or monthly basis. So we are there and we are present. We sit in construction planning and project planning meetings. We are a phone call away or we are on site very often. So although there may seem like a big difference in the way that they function is very, very not different. Like radiologists and oncologists have our physicists' cell phones, call them on a regular basis for consultation. We do a lot of remote physics when necessary to kind of just support our customers. So they get a paycheck that says something different at the bottom of it, but does that really matter at the end of the day? Not in form and function. The other thing I would say is insourcing versus outsourcing. One, it can be an economic decision, but it's also for a healthcare provider, is medical physics a core competency of that organization? And I talked to you about the complexity of the regulatory and the radiation safety and the molecular imaging environment and radiopharmaceuticals. That is not their specialty. Like that is what we do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We wake up every day and we think about it and we do research on it and we strive to be the best that we can be. Is that a core competency or a focus of a healthcare system? That's a strategic question that I think every provider has to answer for themselves and ultimately do is, hey, is this something we want to put a lot of time and energy in? Or do I want to find a trusted partner that this is what they do, and I'll hold them accountable for making sure they do that in an efficient way, but in the safest, most with the highest quality, with a focus on patient care as I can get.
Right. And yeah, I mean, and then to hit the other side, right? Like insourcing is not always sustainable. I feel like it's pretty unrealistic to think that every hospital can staff their own physicists, especially given the work shortage that we have going on.
Well, I mean that's right. I mean, and if you look at some of the largest healthcare systems in the country, whether it be Ascension Health or HCA, they have built hundreds and hundreds of ambulatory care and outpatient centers across the country. So for an in-house physicist that used to go to one building and now has to take care of a state's worth of ambulatory care centers where they have X-ray and CT and C-arms, that is not reasonable. So a function of, again, I think just care moving out of that acute care setting, and literally medical physics is needed on every street corner in this country, requires some level of change in the industry, right? And that's what, again, we're advocating to lead that. We want to lead from the front and make sure that it's done in a positive way, as opposed to a negative way. And but the dynamic in the industry is really forcing it to happen.
Is there ever any concern with, in-house teams becoming too insulated? And actually to tie into that, I'm very curious about like what does the working relationship between your team of physicists look like in terms of, communication, peer education?
Maybe I'll kind of start with the second one. I'll go back to the first one. The value of having 250 clinicians in our company is we have the ability to identify subject matter experts. So at a modality and maybe like an OEM level. So our physicists can go in and research like who has great experience in MRI on maybe a less popular, like a Hitachi or an MRI, a Fuji mammography system that they're not going to see a lot of them in the marketplace. So when they go to do the testing on it, there probably is some knowledge transfer, knowledge share that can really be helpful to a physicist in that kind of environment. So we really leverage the collective knowledge and our experience and our exposure as a larger physics group to be able to make the experience better and to be better at what we do. So it's really just kind of capturing that knowledge and how do we share it across our company. And even with in-house organizations, we work very collaboratively. There's no kind of walls between the way we work. We work hand in hand with in-house physicists all the time. On the other side is there a risk of maybe in-house teams getting too isolated and not having enough exposure? One thing medical physics has done very well is, they have very strong associations. So Camp App and AAPM are great resources for physicists to get continuing education. So I think the industry as a whole does a very good job of educating its workforce over the lifetime of their career. So I think that is very positive. But when you have like really, certainly in the radiopharmaceutical and molecular imaging space, like situations where Pluvicto comes in and it really requires a completely different thought process from a radiation safety standpoint. If you don't have experience with that or you haven't seen it, you really risk like missing something, right? So I think those are the places where, again, we have hyper evolution and technology advancement in that nuclear molecular imaging space and in Theranostics, where exposure and having visibility to it across many environments really can create great value for caregivers and someone that's just getting into Pluvicto treatment or something similar to that. So I think that's one of the things that we can provide great value to the industry around.
I've never actually heard of Pluvicto before. Would you mind just giving me a bit of additional context?
Pluvicto is a radiotherapy to treat advanced prostate cancer. So if you were diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, 3 years ago, you probably would have been entering hospice and your chances of survival were very low. Pluvicto is a radiotherapy that attacks the cancer at the prostate level, and it has had amazing results in treating very advanced stages of prostate cancer. There is a tremendous investment in that theranostic radiopharmaceutical space right now because they're learning what used to be what a traditional radiopharmaceutical tracer can now be inverted into actually a treatment and a therapy device. So it's another strategy for oncology treatment outside of, traditional radiation therapy. And it opens up a whole world of opportunity and optimism for people that have an advanced stage cancer.
We've got our Theranostics episode coming up down the pipeline.
Okay.
So I'm a few steps behind because I haven't done my interviews yet.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing healthcare, and it's really one of those places where it's bringing together again. You use a lot of diagnostic inspect and molecular imaging in the diagnosis and in the treatment planning, and then again you're providing a therapy, so you're actually providing oncology services. So it's changing again the dynamic of kind of these silos we've built around diagnostic and therapy, medical physics, and bringing them very closely together.
Let's say that I am a patient getting a scan tomorrow. I think I got an MRI maybe last year or something, but that's it. Let's say hypothetically I'm getting scanned tomorrow. As a patient, like, am I going to have any sort of indication whether or not my physics staff is in-house or outsourced?
No, you're not. I mean, and ironically, I was at the dentist earlier this week, and I got a dental X-ray, and I looked who was the medical physics provider on the system just by curiosity, because I wanted to see who had tested it. But I think that's the safety in your organization is that diagnostic imaging device is accredited by ACR or RadSite or one of the accrediting bodies, and we all submit images and we all do the work towards the parameters that the body has set. We use ACR for an example. So whether an in-house physicist or one physics physicist is doing that work, we're all working to the same set of parameters in that. So I don't think it's something that patients have to worry about. And it's why the regulatory environment is set up the way it is to ensure safety for patients.
And so, I mean, let's talk timeline a little bit, right? Like looking forward 10 years or so. What do you think the landscape is going to look like, as we move into the future?
We talked a lot about consolidation, right? And maybe I'm biased, but as I've worked for over 25, almost 30 years in this healthcare environment, and I've seen a lot of different things. If you go back 30 years, the outsourcing and the consolidation trend within hospitals, it started with things like laundry and food services and security, and it's moved up the technical paradigm, and then it went to biomedical services and then diagnostic imaging, and then like even radiologists and the way that radiologists function within a hospital. Like all of those things have trended towards outsourcing. I believe medical physics will continue to go in that direction, but there will always be good balance in the industry, right? Like balance is a natural form and function, and it exists in all those other technical, clinical, and ancillary services that I talked about. But I think you'll see more of it in the medical physics space. And it's a natural occurrence of what we've seen in healthcare. And to think that this will be resistant to that or just like not towards the normal trends that we see, I think that would be unrealistic. And that's why I would never do anything that is not in the best interest of the industry. And I truly believe that we can lead the change in a positive way in that direction, because inevitably it's going to happen. We want it to happen in a positive way and bring good things to the advocacy of medical physicists and be able to invest in positive regulatory environments, positive educational environments for physicists, and create great opportunity for the industry.
Talking about the industry as a whole, right? Like we know that we are short on physicists nationally. I'm kind of curious, like what your spin is on, like what are steps that we can be taking to try and address the staffing shortage, right? And is there anything that One Physics is doing to try and address this as a physics company?
Yeah, and like that's a big thing when I talk about like medical physics being underrepresented or underserved is people just don't know about the industry and the profession. It is a great profession for someone to consider, right? It's highly technical. You can make a great income and have a great career in that space, but people just aren't aware that medical physics even exists in some situations. So we're doing a lot to just drive awareness about the importance of it and the career opportunities that it presents to people. So that's one. Secondly, we invest in a lot of residency programs, both on the diagnostic and the therapy side. I think we're up to 7 or 8 residency programs across the company today. So we're a very big believer in partnering with academics to build and educate and bring great physicists into the environment and do our responsibility there. Obviously, it's a bit self-serving. We hope that they choose a career with One Physics, but maybe they want to go back to academia or do something different. Regardless, it's an investment that we will continue to make in the industry. And then thirdly, I think just advocating, right? Advocating with the American Board of Radiology, AAPM, being active in Camp Ep, all of those things that we can continue to do as a larger organization in this industry to drive positive change and awareness. It is resource constrained, right? I think the industry could definitely use more physicists and more physicists coming into their career and getting excited about it. So that's something that I think we're all challenged with. I get concerned that kind of the aging population that we have with some of our physicists that have been doing it for quite a long time, and they're a wealth of knowledge and expertise, and we have to create a responsible transition of that knowledge base to kind of the next generation of physicists.
From what I have heard, and this is all secondhand conversational things I've read, it feels like there's a very high barrier to entry in terms of academic requirements to become a physicist. The fundamental classes and education that you need in order to get into a medical physics program is already high. So, I mean, how do you feel about that barrier to entry? And do you feel like there's any value in potentially, loosening up the base requirements to get more people into these programs faster?
I think in certain situations, I would love to see that. I mean, so if you talk about those base requirements, right, you have to have a master's degree from an accredited medical physics program, and then you have to go through a minimum of a 2-year residency program. And then if you change the state that you're working in, those requirements might be different. So you might have to do kind of more residency or more time served kind of learning if you went from Texas to Colorado or to New York. So it is very stringent. Obviously, we work with Camp Ep to find the most efficient way to train physicists in a responsible way and make sure that, look, everyone needs to be educated at the right level. Is there over influence or maybe over education at times? I would say it feels that way for sure in certain environments. But again, we all play by the same rules. We don't set those regulations. But I do think over time, again, One Physics hopes to influence them in a positive way.
Right. And I wasn't so much getting at the requirements for the master's and, residency. I'm talking about to even get into that master's program needing a physics degree already, like a BA in physics.
I think that's where, that starts with our education system. But I think just general awareness of this as a great career path, right? I mean, I have 3 teenagers today, right? So I have, my first is a freshman in her first semester at college. I have a senior in high school, and I have a freshman in high school. Talking with them about their career options and choices is very, very different than it was 30 years ago when I graduated college. And I have an engineering background. I don't have a physics degree, but I have an engineering degree. So I've worked very closely with it and I understand it, but we don't have as many people going into math and sciences as we probably need just to get, again, to feed the industry. And it's something that we have to, we work every day to build tools and make our medical physicists as efficient as possible. Because we want medical physicists to do physics work and not be burdened with other things that may kind of clutter their plate. So we try to take as much of that off as we can and allow them to go do what they've been trained to do.
If you had to respond to someone thinking that outsourcing is like a temporary stopgap, what would you say to that? Or, would you pitch that this is just the inevitable future of physics to some degree?
I don't think it's a stopgap, right? I mean, the trend has existed for decades. And like I've seen, we've seen acceleration of maybe outsourcing and some consolidation, but not at the pace as occurred in other parts of healthcare. My point of view is that history would show us, right, that other aspects of clinical care and other services, whether they're ancillary, technical, or clinical, have moved in this direction. And it would be, you'd have to go out on a flyer to say that this is just fundamentally, medical physics is fundamentally different than everything else that happens in healthcare, and it's not going to follow that same trend. And I don't personally believe that. Like, I think it will move in that direction at whatever pace is responsible, and the industry moves. And again, it is change, but I think that the change can be in a positive way as we invest in, again, advocacy for medical physics. We try to bring more young people into the profession. We create educational opportunities through residencies and other programs. We've done a lot of work to bring international physicists into the country through structured mentorship programs. So we're really doing a lot of things to just build up the profession. And then ultimately, I like to think of it as we want to create a destination workplace where a physicist can, if they want to be a diagnostic staff physicist and a chief physicist, they could do that. If they want to move into leadership, they want to work more on the business side or the regulatory side, they want to get into radiation safety. We provide so many different career paths for physicists to go that there are so many positive things. And you can be just resistant to change and just say, I don't want anything to change. I don't think that that's an option. I just don't think healthcare in this country, and with all the challenges that it has, is just going to allow medical physics to stay as it has been for 50 years. So we need to evolve. We need to get better. We need to adapt. And I think we can continue to do those things in a really positive way for the industry and for our customer partners. I get asked every day by not every day, but on a weekly basis, in conversations with customers that want a comprehensive physics partner. Not to do everything for them, but to help them as their footprint changes and they expand and they get into new things. They can't possibly do it all themselves. And so they're looking for a responsible, trusted partner to be able to do that with, and we're certainly trying to be that for them.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us today on Rethink Imaging. It's been really great chatting with you today.
Yeah, Chris, no, we appreciate the opportunity. I certainly do. I love the work that you do and continue to do it. I'm looking forward to upcoming episodes and, look forward to maybe someday being back on the show, but I appreciate the time that you've given me today very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And we would always love to have you back. This has been Jason Schneck, the CEO of One Physics. Jason, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Frame by Frame Rethink Imaging is brought to you by Imalogics. Here, you'll find engaging interviews with thought leaders, experts, and patients, sharing stories that showcase the transformative power of medical imaging. To discover how Imalogics is rethinking imaging in healthcare, visit imalogics.com. Be sure to subscribe to Frame by Frame Rethink Imaging on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And from all of us here at Imalogics, thanks for tuning in.